In the name of the Almighty God, the Compassionate, the Merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers. Welcome to another exciting episode with an exciting guest. This guest is very dear to my heart, a special guest who meant a lot in my development as a human being and as a Muslim specifically. He's one of the reasons that I'm sitting here as your host of this amazing Noor podcast. That is none other than my dear mentor and teacher, Sayed Hossein al-Qazwini. Assalamu alaikum, Sayyidina.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
An honor to have you, Sayyidina.
It's such a pleasure and honor to be with you tonight, and I'm undeserving of your kind words, Sayyid Sajjad.
Astaghfirullah, Sayyidina. It's been a long time. We haven't met in 7 years.
Yes.
It's way too long.
Indeed. Please don't let it be another 7 years.
Inshallah.
For us to meet again, inshallah.
Inshallah. How is it to be in the Netherlands again, Sayyidina?
Excellent. I really enjoy being in the presence of the brothers and sisters here in the Netherlands. I find it to be a very warm community, very friendly community, a thirsty community for knowledge, for motivation and inspiration. And every time I come, I enjoy it even more than the previous time.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And we are blessed as a community to have ulama like you who visit us regularly and inspire us and motivate us to do better, inshallah.
Thank you for having us and hosting us.
Alhamdulillah. But Sayyidina, I know you very well, but maybe some of the audience, the viewers, don't know you that well. Of course, it's undeniable that you're very famous and you have a lot of projects and did a lot of good work in the English-speaking sector of Shia Islam, alhamdulillah. But if someone who doesn't know you asks, who is Sayed Hossein? How would you introduce yourself, Sayyidina?
I see myself as a humble student of knowledge, a seeker of knowledge. This is how I've seen myself ever since as I was a child and up till now. I'm in pursuit of knowledge, of Islamic studies, of Islamic knowledge. And if I've done anything, it's something very minimal. I don't think I've done anything. And I have so much shortcomings. And I wish that I could do more for Islam and for the school of thought of Ahlul Bayt. We owe it to them to spread the message of Ahlul Bayt and to spread the message of Islam. I see myself as a very small, humble servant and a small seeker of knowledge who strives to understand more, to know more, to seek more knowledge, and to seek nearness to Allah Azza wa Jal. This is how I wish people to know me.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina. It shows your humbleness because you're not only a student of knowledge, of seeking knowledge, but also a teacher. After 25 years of studying Hawza, mashallah, you developed to be a teacher as well. You study Bahs al-Kharij at the Hawza of Karbala, and you have so many projects going on. You have published so many books. May Allah bless you and give you more tawfiq, inshallah wa ta'ala.
Thank you.
And you're known from North America to Europe to Canada and of course to Australia, UK. You have been to many countries.
If Allah accepts me as a humble servant, that's the only thing that matters.
Alhamdulillah.
If He doesn't, then none of this matters.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina. So as we said, you studied more than 25 years.
I've been in the Hawza for 20 years.
20 years.
Since 2004.
20 years.
21 years.
21 years in the Hawza. And what inspired you, if you could name one or several occasions during your life, during growing up, what inspired you to be a scholar or seek the pursuit of knowledge?
Of course, I grew up in a family of scholars and speakers and mujtahideen. The Qazwini family from Karbala, where our origin is from, the city of Karbala. We have several mujtahids in the family. And in fact, we had maraja in the family. My great-grandfather, Sayed Hossein al-Qazwini, was the top marja in Karbala at the time, and he was a student of Sheikh Murtada al-Ansari. His two sons, Sayyid Muhammad Rida and Sayyid Muhammad Ibrahim al-Qazwini, were both mujtahids, and they had followers, they had muqallideen. Sayyid Ibrahim al-Qazwini, Sahib al-Dawabit, who is a cousin of our grandfather, Sayyid Hossein al-Qazwini, was a well-known scholar at the time and the top marja of his time. So we come from a household of ulama, a household of jurists and mujtahideen. I remember at the age of 12, on a summer trip, I went to Qom and I met with a scholar and a relative as well. And that night we stayed up till late hours in the evening, and he asked me, what would you like to do in the future? I told him I'd like to maybe become a dentist. He said, that's interesting, but are there any dentists in the family? I said, no. Is your father a dentist? No. Is it rewarding to be a dentist? I said, obviously, financially it is very rewarding. He said, but there's another job that could be even more rewarding. Maybe not financially, but it's very self-rewarding, and you will see the results in dunya and in akhirah, making a difference in people's lives, and that is by becoming a alim and a mujtahid. And he told me that you have what it takes. I was only 12 years old.
Wow.
He spoke to me like as if I'm a man. And it was the first time that I was being treated in that sort of way.
Wow.
Usually when you're 12 years old, you're spoken to as a child,
Yes.
as a young child. But to be treated as a man, it was my first time. And he kept on motivating me and inspiring me that night to study to become a alim and a mujtahid. And from that day, it became my goal and my dream in life to become a alim and to become a mujtahid. It was after that, it was everything that I dreamed about. It was all that I thought about from morning till night. When I went back to the US, I asked my father to start teaching me.
Wow.
And he was surprised that why is this sudden change?
Wow.
And I told him that I've been inspired and motivated. And from that day, my father began with his studies with myself in Arabic grammar, nahu, sarf. I remember studying Arsal al-Amaliya, fiqh. And from that day, the love of knowledge, the love of ilm was planted in my heart like a seed. Until today, this tree keeps on growing.
MashaAllah. Amazing, amazing, Sayyidina. Ahsantum, Sayyidina. Thank you very much. The story itself, yani it's very interesting that an external party outside of your scholarly family influenced you that much that you pursued the journey and seeking of knowledge.
Yes, absolutely.
Of course, how you're raised and growing up in an environment full of scholars also had his influence.
Of course,
without a doubt.
especially my father. My father's impact on my life, his role, his travels, the amount of people that he's motivated and inspired, that obviously has immensely affected me as well.
Ahsantum, ahsantum. And now you've spent 20 plus years in the Hawzat and academic studies, Islamic academia. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. And when we were brainstorming about the topics of this podcast, you said, I have very much interest in the field of fiqh, jurisprudence, but I don't know if the viewers would like it. But I said, let's delve into it because that's your expertise, that's where you're teaching in as well. Could you teach me and the viewers a bit more about the history of jurisprudence in Islam and the importance of it?
Sure. So jurisprudence fiqh began at the hands of Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq. Of course, we have cases where earlier Imams also discussed fiqh issues, but the Imams were busy in instituting the school of thought. Imam Hossein did not get a chance to establish fiqh, nor did Amir al-Mu'mineen. Amir al-Mu'mineen was busy with fighting wars. The first person who had the chance was Imam al-Baqir and more so Imam al-Sadiq. They began to elaborate and expand on fiqh and Islamic law, all the detailed laws of praying, fasting, khum, zakat, hajj, umrah, commerce, renting, buying, selling. And of course, there's two opinions here of whether the Imam was relating simply that which he learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and was passed on to him from Rasulullah, or does he enjoy an authority of legislating? Does he have al-wilayat al-shari'iyya, the authority of legislating? Here there's two schools of thought, and we'll leave it at that. So the Imams began expanding on fiqh, and as it continued through Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, Imam al-Rida, they had their own contributions. There's a book called Masail Ali ibn Ja'far. Ali ibn Ja'far is the brother of Musa ibn Ja'far. He compiled an entire book of the fiqh traditions of Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. We have Uyun Akhbar al-Rida by Shaykh al-Saduq, which is full of compilations of narrations regarding fiqh. We also have Ilal al-Shara'i' by Shaykh al-Saduq, which are many traditions on the authority of Imam al-Rida. And then Imam al-Jawad, Imam al-Hadi, Imam al-Hasan al-Askari, they all expanded upon fiqh. Until the time of Shaykh al-Saduq, and that period where they took the narrations of Ahl al-Bayt, they took aside the asanid, and they issued fatwas with the exact wording of the hadith of the Imam. Like Shaykh al-Saduq's book Al-Muqni' and Al-Hidayah. It's a book of fatwa, but it's actually narrations without asanid, without chain of narrators. This is called Al-Fiqh al-Ma'thur. Shaykh al-Tusi was probably the first scholar to begin to derive laws and not issue a fatwa based on the narration itself with the same exact wording. No, he changed some of the wording. And he began to derive laws and expand from the general principles that were given to the Imams. Shaykh al-Tusi began to expand. Of course, there were two other scholars who unfortunately their works did not reach us, Ibn Abi Aqil al-Umani and Ibn Junayd. These were two brilliant scholars that also began the process of ijtihad with the use of logic, with the use of al-aql, but none of their works reached us today. Shaykh al-Tusi's work, Al-Mabsut, is probably the oldest work in Al-Fiqh al-Istidlali, where the law is mentioned with its proof and evidence. So now we begin to see that fiqh with its proof and evidence is being mentioned. And then that began to expand with Ibn Idris al-Hilli and the school of Hilla, because Shaykh al-Tusi was in Baghdad. So was Shaykh al-Mufid before him. Shaykh al-Tusi moved to Najaf. So the Hawza moved to Najaf with him. And then the Hawza moved to Al-Hilla with Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli and Al-Alam al-Hilli. And fiqh was evolving. Usul al-fiqh was evolving. You have different schools. You have the school of Jabal Amil in Lebanon. You have Madrasat Halab, Aleppo in Syria. And then you have the school of Karbala later on during the Akhbari period, where fiqh was developing in Karbala at the time of the Akhbaris. And you have Al-Wahid al-Bahbahani, who came and eventually was victorious upon the Akhbari school of thought. He defeated this Akhbari school of thought and established the Usuli school of thought. And anyone who came after Al-Wahid al-Bahbahani was benefiting from him and was a student of his.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina. So my first question would be, what was the gap between Shaykh Saduq and the Imams?
Shaykh al-Saduq was born in the minor occultation. Al-Ghaybat al-Sughra. And in fact, he says that I was born due to the dua of Imam al-Hujjah. His father, Ali ibn Babawayh, the Imam writes to him a letter during the minor occultation. He prays for him and he tells him that he will have two children and both of them will be pious. One was a Shaykh al-Saduq and the other was his brother. So he was born in the minor occultation within that 70-year period of the minor occultation. But most of his works were produced during the greater occultation, Al-Ghaybat al-Kubra.
And you said Shaykh al-Tusi was the first one who derived laws from the ahadith that reached him.
Who wrote in Fiqh al-Istidlali. The scholars before him also derived from the ahadith. But their books was not derivative fiqh. It wasn't fiqh al-istidlali. Shaykh al-Tusi's book, Al-Mabsut, was fiqh al-istidlali. So he'll mention the law and then proof for that law. Is it ijma'? Is it logic? Is it aql? Is it a verse from the Quran or is it a hadith? And usually he'll mention the opinions of other schools of thought. Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, Malik, Ahmad ibn Hanbal, and others. And you see that Sheikh al-Tusi is so well versed in other people's opinions and the opinions of other schools of thought. Today we see this missing. What's the opinions of other schools of thought on this topic? We don't really know.
Even know our own opinions.
No. Sheikh al-Tusi was very well versed in the opinions of other scholars. Not just in fiqh, even in his tafsir, in his al-Tibyan, fi tafsir al-Quran, when he'll mention views and opinions on the tafsir of an ayah, he'll mention وَقَالَ قُتَادَةَ وَقَالَ مُجَاهِد وَقَالَ, and he'll mention views and opinions of the Sunni school of thought, and then he will mention also obviously the opinion of Imam al-Baqir and Imam al-Sadiq.
Ahsantum, what a gem was Sheikh Tusi, as well as all the sheikhs like Sheikh Saduq and Sheikh Mufid.
Indeed.
But when you said Sheikh Tusi derived the laws from the ahadith that reached him, were these ahadith that were used for the laws already stated by the imams as laws, or were it like he was saying to one of his companions about a certain issue, about a certain topic? He was, for example, about music, he stated something, and Sheikh Tusi used that to derive a law from it.
We have two types of narrations. We have one type of narration that is stated as a law, as a general law for all places and all times. And these are called usul wa qawa'id. The Imam says, علينا إلقاء الأصول وعليكم التفريع. We will give you the general guidelines and the general principles, and you shall derive. Other types of narrations where the Imam was asked. For example, someone says, there is najasa on my clothing. May I pray in it or not? Or after I prayed, I realized there's najasa on my clothing. The Imam says, your salah is okay. Or he will say, repeat your salah. From these narrations that were stated in isolated incidents, answering this person's question, that person's question, these ahadith were gathered. We have compendiums of ahadith like Al-Kafi, Al-Tahdhib, Al-Istibsar, Malahid al-Faqih. And jurists use these books of ahadith to derive laws, to derive Islamic laws. Sheikh al-Tusi himself gathered these ahadith from other sources. We have the 400 sources of hadith, al-Usul al-Arba'ama'ah. These 400, the result of them you will find in Al-Kafi, Al-Tahdhib, Al-Istibsar, Malahid al-Faqih. And he himself, Sheikh al-Tusi, who gathered these narrations, he derived laws from these narrations.
Ahsantum. And my question would be, how do the contemporary jurists derive their laws from ahadith? And do they only use ahadith, or do they use Quran as well? And do they use the same methods as the scholars from back in the day, like Sheikh Saduq and Sheikh Tusi? Or do they have new methods of deriving laws from Quran and Hadith?
We have a field called Usul al-Fiqh. Usul al-Fiqh are the principles for fiqh. It's the methodology of deriving Islamic laws. You cannot become a jurist. You cannot derive an Islamic law without first establishing your Usul al-Fiqh. What is your methodology? So our scholars today, each one has his methodology. And their methodology might be different from one jurist to another. They might be a bit different. Yes, the methodology of scholars today is different from previous scholars. We see a difference. There's a difference in methodology. For example, Sayyid al-Murtada, who was one of the former jurists in the formative period, he rejected akhbar ahad, isolated reports. He said this is only conjecture. These narrations only give us dhann, and we are not allowed to act upon dhann. We only accept tawatur, numerous reports, a hadith that has been reported numerously.
Yes.
So that's his methodology. Sheikh al-Tusi disagreed. Sheikh al-Tusi would accept isolated reports. So today, ulama have to establish usul al-fiqh, their research in usul al-fiqh, their principles, their theories, and then come to fiqh. In usul al-fiqh, for example, we discuss, is ijma', consensus of scholars. Does it carry any weight? Does it carry any authority or not? Shuhra, a popular fatwa, is it binding? Does it carry any weight and authority or not? These are principles that we have to first figure out in usul al-fiqh, and then we come to fiqh. And that's basically the methodology that we use in fiqh.
Wow.
So it varies from scholar to scholar.
Okay.
You might not find two scholars with the same exact principles and methods.
Ahsantum. And how do we came up with the laws, not came up with, how did we derive the laws of continuity, istishab, or law of haraj, law of difficulties? How are these laws derived? Also from the same ahadith?
Of course. In fact, istishab, which is the law of continuity, which basically means if you were certain of something and later on you doubted it, do not break your certainty with doubt. So, for example, if you were certain that you had wudu, and then an hour later you doubted whether you still have wudu or not, you say that I'm certain I did have wudu, and I'm not sure if I broke my wudu or not. I will not break my certainty with doubt. I will continue with my certainty, and I will say that inshallah I still have wudu. Unless you're sure that you broke your wudu, for example, you fell asleep. This is called istishab. Istishab, our Sunni brothers and sisters also accept istishab, and this is in the Sunni usul al-fiqh as well. Okay. And they call it istishab al-hal. However, it is based on logic. For them, it is based on logic. That if you were certain of something, and later on you doubted whether it is continuous or not, you act upon your certainty. And you do not invalidate your certainty with doubt. Until the time of the father of Shaykh al-Bahai, Hossein ibn Abd al-Samad. He was in the 10th, he was in the 11th Hijri century. He wrote a book for Shah Tahmas, and in it he discusses al-istishab, and he supports al-istishab with narrations. لا تنقض اليقين بالشك. We have several narrations from Imam Sadiq that says لا تنقض اليقين بالشك. This was the first time that istishab was supported by narrations and not aql. Before Al-Hussein ibn Abd al-Samad, the father of Shaykh al-Bahai, everyone supported or argued for istishab using logic. After that, narrations were used. The other law that you mentioned, no difficulty, correct? This is a principle in the Quran. ما جعل عليكم في الدين من حرج. That in Islam, Allah has not put upon you difficulty. There shall be ease. There's no difficulty and hardship in Islam. نفي العسر والحرج. This principle is actually derived from the Quran. And not a hadith. Yes, we may support it with a hadith, but the actual foundation is from the Quran.
Amazing, mashallah. And could we with certainty say, Sayyidina, I don't know if this is a valid question, I'm saying this from a layman's perspective, could we with certainty say that all the laws we have and we use in Islamic jurisprudence are derived either from ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam or from the Quran? Could we would certainly say that?
We can say the vast majority of our laws are either from the Quran or from ahadith. We have some laws that are based on logic and reason, aql. For example, to preserve a human life, حفظ النفس المحترمة. The proof and evidence for this law is aql and reason, to preserve a human life. It's not based on a quotation from the Quran or hadith. Yes, the vast majority of our other laws are based on either the Quran or the hadith of Ahlul Bayt.
Ahsantum. For example, the urf, we have a law which says you have to see the circumstances in the country or the area you live, what is the urf, and based on that you have to act in a certain way.
Sure.
Is that also based on logic, or is that also from hadith or Quran?
See, we have a couple of things. We have something called as-sira al-uqala'iyya, which means rational practice. What does that mean? We believe that the saying, the actions, and the tacit approval of a ma'soom carries authority. So meaning, when Imam Sadiq says something, or does something, or approves of something, this has authority. This is binding, and it has authority. If the Imam were to see rational practice and he was quiet, he didn't object, that rational practice carries weight and carries authority. So for example, he noticed that it was rational practice during the time of Imam Sadiq to refer to the experts in every field. A person cannot become an expert in every field. You can become an expert in one field, two fields. Previously, there were polymaths like Ibn Sina, who could be a philosopher, mathematician, scientist, physician, theologian, all at once. Today, with all of the professions and expertise, all of the specializations have developed so much that you can only become an expert in one field. What do you do in all other fields? You're a doctor, but you're in need of an engineer. You're in need of a lawyer. Do you have to become a lawyer yourself, or you do your research? Do you become an engineer yourself, or do you Google it, or do your own research in engineering? No, you refer to an expert. الرجوع على أهل الخبرة. The Imam approved of such practice, of rational practice, and hence it becomes authoritative. And hence we perform taqlid, because it's rational practice. I'm not a doctor. I refer to the physician, to the expert in the field of medicine. I'm not a lawyer. I'll refer to a lawyer. If you're not a mujtahid, you'll refer to a mujtahid, because it's just logical. That's logical practice. This is intertwined with urf. It's intertwined with urf. Urf in Sunni ijtihad plays a bigger role. In our role, in our ijtihad, in Shi'i fiqh, it plays a major role, but it's not a principle of its own. It helps us understand narrations. How do we understand a narration? Based on urf, the urf of that time. So when the Imam is speaking something to Zurara, how am I meant to understand this? Does it carry philosophical meanings? We say no. The Imam was speaking in an urfi sort of way. And that's how we're supposed to understand the sayings of the Imam. And urf does play a role, but it's not a principle. It's more of application. When understanding the applications of the laws, it has to be based on urf.
Ahsantum. And when it comes to ahadith specifically, how does the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam approach the ahadith? Is the matan, the text, the actual text itself more important, or the chain of transmission and narrators who are involved and through who we got the hadith?
Here there's several schools of thought. There's one school of thought that puts all the emphasis on the matan and not so much on the sanad. And I could say maybe the akhbari school of thought, or those who have akhbari tendencies, they lean towards this view, that it's only what the Imam said, but how did it reach us? With what chain of narrators? How do we know that the Imam said this? It doesn't matter. I can discover whether the Imam said it or not by the words, not by the chain of narrators. So I don't have to have a chain of narrators saying so-and-so on the authority of so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so says that Imam Sadiq said this. I don't need that chain of narrators. I can discover from the words, do these words match the other words of Imam Sadiq or not? This is putting emphasis on the matan, the actual content of the hadith. Another school of thought says, no, we cannot bypass the chain of narrators. We have to see who the chain of narrators are. Are they reliable? Are they not reliable? Were they deviant? Were they Sunni, Shi'i? What type of Shia were they? Because amongst Shia there were different schools of thought, Waqifi, Fatahi, Nawusi. So we have to see who is telling us this hadith by Imam Sadiq. Who is the source? We have to make sure that this source is credible. A third opinion says that both matter. The content of the hadith and the chain of narrators of the hadith. Both matter. We have to assess them both, analyze them both, and if they both check out, we accept that hadith.
Okay. And where does the current majority of the ulama go towards? Do more to the chain of transmission?
Here, for example, Sayed al-Khoi looks at both. For him, the sanad is important, and so is the matan. The matan, the content of the hadith should not be incompatible with the Quran. It should not have been stated out of taqiyya, for example. Same too in the school of thought of Sayyid Sistani. in the methodology of Sayed Sistani. He looks at both. He studies both the chain of narrators and at the same time the content of the hadith.
And would you say it's 50-50?
It's not that simple. We have some ulama that only look at the chain of narrators. For example, Sayyid Taqlid rahmatullah alayhi. I remember in his fiqh discussions, he look at a hadith. If it has a weak chain of narrators, he will not even look at the content.
Oh wow.
He says, this is weak, put it aside. Let's see the next hadith. If the next hadith has a chain of narrators that checks out, he'll study the matan. If it doesn't, he will not even give a chance to the matan. He will not give a chance to the content of the hadith. He was a strict rajali, as Sayyid Taqlid al-Qumi. And you have other scholars that don't even look at the chain of narrators. They feel that every single hadith in Al-Kafi is authentic. Every single hadith in Tahdhib, Al-Sibsar, Milahd al-Faqih, some even as far as to go and say that everything is in Bihar al-Anwar or Wasa'il al-Shia is authentic. All I have to do is study the content of the hadith. So there's a wide spectrum of views and opinions out there.
Amazing, mashallah. There's so much to taqlid and ijtihad and jurisprudence. I have so many questions coming up every time you answer one question, mashallah. Sayyidina, when a fatwa or law is formulated, because especially nowadays, we in the West, the youth, the Shia communities, have the feeling that the ulama, the jurists who live mainly in the Middle East, mainly in Iran, Iraq, and like the Arabian Peninsula, they don't have a feeling of our circumstances. But when a fatwa or law is formulated, do the jurists take the circumstances in the West or in the East in consideration when they come with a fatwa? You're in this world, so.
We have primary laws and secondary laws. When taking into consideration a primary law, a jurist does not look at where this fatwa is being implemented. Is it in Iraq, Saudi Arabia, America, the Netherlands, the United States, New Zealand? Doesn't matter. This is a primary law. This law applies to everyone. Everyone. This is God's law on earth. This is what the jurist has understood from the Quran, from the Hadith, from Aql, from Ijma'. This is the primary law. The second step is to look at the secondary law. The secondary law, here the marji' or the alim has to take in consideration, is there any harm caused by this law? Is there any difficulty caused by this law? Is there any difficulty and hardship caused by this law? If it does, then we can say that this law temporarily does not apply to such sort of people. Let me give you an example. Shaking hands between men and women. The primary law stated by the vast majority of our ulama is that it is haram. It is haram. Some ulama in their Risala al-Amaliyah, immediately after that, they will mention this, that for those who fall in hardship if they don't shake hands, especially those in the West, if you get denied a citizenship, for example, or a job, an important job, or a very important interview, where it can have detrimental results on your life. Here, if not shaking hands will cause you difficulty and harm, then you may do so. It becomes permissible, but only to lift that difficulty and hardship. So you don't go around shaking people's hands, whoever you see. No, just to the degree that you are no longer in hardship and difficulty. You see, that becomes a secondary law. With the secondary law, they take into consideration the circumstances of the mukallaf, of the person under question. But the primary law, no. These circumstances are not taken into consideration. It's a divine command by Allah Azza wa Jal that it has to be stated. It's besides the fact that it could cause difficulty or hardship. If it does cause difficulty or hardship, then that's another story.
I see.
So let me give you another example. Performing wudu for salah, this is wajib. This is a primary law. Everyone has to perform wudu before salah. Well, what if it's winter and you don't have access to warm water and you have to perform wudu in the middle of winter with freezing water? Here ulama would say, if this will cause you difficulty and harm, then you may go to tayammum. But that's as a secondary cause. That's as a secondary law. Now the jurist is looking at the circumstances. With the primary law, he doesn't look at the circumstances.
I see. But with the examples you gave, shaking hands and when you have difficulty with doing wudu with cold water, the secondary laws, it seems like they're open for interpretation. For example, I'm going to a job interview and besides me is a lady and I have to shake her hands. If I don't shake her hands, she will have a bad image of me and she will deny me the job,
Yes.
for example. I can apply for another job somewhere else. Does this count as a difficulty?
No. If you can easily apply to another job, then this is not difficulty. This is not hardship.
Yeah.
And the person has to decide whether this is difficulty and hardship or not.
Okay.
If you can easily find another job, it doesn't give you the justification of shaking the other person's hand.
Yeah.
Usually the example is given when, for example, you've been through medical school and you finished and now you're offered a job, there's an interview, and if you don't shake hands, you will not become a doctor. You'll have to go work at some fast food restaurant. You see, that sort of circumstance is given, that sort of example is given. That is difficulty. You study for 8-9 years at a medical school and then you end up working, for example, at McDonald's. This is difficulty and harm for you. But if you can easily find another job, this is not difficulty. This is not hardship. And that does not give you a justification to shake the opposite gender's hands.
But would you agree with me, it isn't somehow open for interpretation and someone would need in these circumstances or in a situation like this, always refer to a scholar for his specific, like...
Not necessarily. The ulama, they give a general statement that if you are going to fall in difficulty and hardship, then you may do so.
Okay.
If you will fall in difficulty and hardship from fasting, don't fast.
Yes.
From wudu, don't perform wudu, perform tayammum. From ghusl, don't perform ghusl, perform tayammum. They're not going to discuss every individual case.
Of course not, yes.
They'll leave it to that individual to decide himself.
Okay.
But it's between them and Allah. Am I really going to fall in difficulty and hardship or not?
Come back to your own intention. And,
Yes.
Okay. Ahsantum. Sayyidina, recently, yani, over the past years, there is a lot of objection or maybe criticism towards the jurists, towards the mujtahideen. Why do we need so much jurists in this day and age? Back in the day, centuries ago, you only had one mujtahid for the whole world around the globe. They would refer to one jurist or maybe two jurists, but now we have hundreds of jurists around the world. And why do we need so many jurists? And there's also a lot of criticism, mainly I think from the akhbari side, about taqlid. Do we need taqlid? Is taqlid from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam? How would we, when we confronted with these questions, how would we answer?
First of all, taqlid, as I said, is something very rational. I ask akhbaris, when you get sick, what do you do? Do you pick up a book of narrations and you try to cure yourself? Or do you refer to the expert in medicine and the expert in legal matters and the expert in engineering? Why does it, when it comes to fiqh, you assume that you're an expert, all you have to do is read the hadith of Ahlul Bayt and derive laws? It doesn't work that way. It's not that simple. The hadith of Ahlul Bayt, first of all, we have to study the chain of narrators. Which one was stated, which one was not stated. Of course, akhbaris will tell you that all of the hadith are authentic. And this is problematic because we do know that there were some liars in the companions of Ahlul Bayt. Some of them fabricated narrations. How do we know this? How do we know which one is a fabrication? We have to study the chain of narrators. Two, some traditions conflict with one another. There are conflicting narrations. If you have not studied usul al-fiqh and you're not a mujtahid and you're an average person, how do you solve conflicting reports and narrations from the Ahlul Bayt? This is the job of a jurist. It's the job of someone who spent years and years of studying fiqh and usul al-fiqh and rijal and is able to derive laws. To say that we are in need of ijtihad and we can pick up a book of hadith and derive laws our own, this doesn't make sense. understanding the hadith of the Imam. This is not simple Arabic. Was the Arabic of the 14 centuries ago, to try to understand what the Imam was saying. What was he genuinely saying? This is the job of a jurist, not
Imam
an average
Sadiq
person.
has a hadith where he says, don't take us hadith light.
Yes. نعم. أمرنا صعب مستصعب. So just to understand what the Imam is saying, this is the job of a jurist. This is not a job of a regular person. Now, why do we need so many maraja'? We don't need so many maraja'. But at the end of the day, the door of ijtihad is open. It's like saying, do we need so many doctors? What are you going to do? Stop the doctors from becoming a doctor? The door of studying is open. The door of ijtihad is open. Anyone who wishes to become a mujtahid, if they exert an effort and do reach the stage of ijtihad, that is their right. That is their right of exercising ijtihad. But are you required to follow all of them? No. You're required to follow one marja'. The one that you deem most knowledgeable. The one that you've reached the conclusion is the most knowledgeable. That's all it is. You just need one expert in the field to take you to God's commands, Allah's.
Ahsantum. And what would you say is the reason that back in the day we had just one or two marjas and nowadays we have hundreds? Is that because the knowledge is more accessible for everyone?
First of all, previously we also had plenty of mujtahideen.
At the same time?
At the same time.
Okay.
Yes, maybe they're not very famous and we don't know all of their names, but we had plenty of mujtahideen.
Okay.
In Jabal Amil, there were tens of mujtahids. You have Al-Hurr al-Amili, you have Baha'uddin al-Amili, you have Shayd al-Awwal, Shayd al-Thani. Some of them were contemporary to one another. And in Halab, you had several jurists contemporary to one another. In Baghdad, you had Al-Sheikh al-Mufid, and Sayyid al-Murtada, and Al-Sheikh al-Tusi, all at the same time. In Al-Hilla, you had Al-Muhaqqiq al-Hilli, and Al-Alam al-Hilli, and Sayyid ibn Tawus, all at the same time. There were plenty of mujtahideen. There were plenty of ulama. In fact, perhaps previously, people would follow the local ulama. So people of Hilla would follow the most knowledgeable in Al-Hilla. And the people of Najaf and the surrounding areas, they would follow the most knowledgeable in Najaf, and so on and so forth. They would follow the local scholars. There were plenty. Yes, today we have a lot of mujtahideen because the process of ijtihad is not too difficult, especially because of modern technology. The amount of books that we have, everything has become accessible, and hence we have plenty of mujtahids. But this is something positive. This is not something negative to be seen as negative. This is something very positive for our community, to have an abundance of mujtahideen who can solve our problems and derive Islamic laws and try to solve our problems, social problems, economic problems, political problems through fiqh. This is something very positive.
And as a student of knowledge, and especially in the science of fiqh and usul, and as a teacher of fiqh and usul, would you say what's your opinion? Is Islamic law all-encompassing? Is it an answer to all your questions and difficulties and problems?
We believe that fiqh has the ability to answer all of our questions and has laws for every issue that we encounter. And in fact, we as Shia, we believe ما من واقعة إلا ولله فيها حكم. We believe that Islamic laws are all-encompassing of all aspects of life. There's not a single act or behavior that we do that doesn't fall in the category of wajib, haram, mustahab, makruh, or mubah. So we do believe that fiqh is all-encompassing of our daily lives. Yes, there are some jurists that believe that there is a gray area in fiqh, like Shahid al-Sadr, Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr. He has the theory of منطقة الفراغ, or the gray area in fiqh. But does he mean that there are some parts of life that do not have laws? No. Sayyid Muhammad Baqir al-Sadr, in his منطقة الفراغ, his theory is that laws that are mustahab and makruh, it is the authority of a mujtahid, or the mujtahid can have the authority to make those laws into wajib and mustahab. I'm sorry, wajib and haram. Something that is mustahab can essentially become wajib if the jurist sees fit. Something that is makruh can essentially become haram if the mujtahid sees fit. So that's the mantaqat al-faragh of Shaykh al-Sadr. Otherwise, I don't think he would disagree that fiqh is all encompassing of all aspects of life.
Amazing, amazing, Sayyidina. I want to build a bridge to our time and this day and age. I remember you and me, we were visiting a windmill, we were going inside and we saw how it was the mechanism and how people lived back in the day, surrounding with nature, and how quality of life was much better. And this day and age, all the technology and everything that made life more comfortable and easier on the outside made us more lazy, made us more unhealthy, lifespan became shorter. And we as Muslims became also more lazy. I could say, why are we striving for the bare minimum when it comes to our wajibat, when it comes to ibadah, when it comes to doing khidmah or serving the community?
Correct. Unfortunately, we see that phenomena, and we're becoming lazier. Everything is becoming smarter in our life, from our TVs to our phones to our cars. Everything's becoming smarter, but human beings are becoming dumber and lazier. Today, with technology, we're becoming more and more lazy. With ChatGPT, for example, previously we'd sit and write an entire essay or an article. Today, you give a couple of points to ChatGPT or even Google or even Microsoft Word, and you have a whole essay. Unfortunately, we are becoming lazier. We're becoming more idle. We're becoming inactive. Although we're advancing technologically, but we human beings, we're morally, we're deteriorating.
And Islam is against laziness, right? You have a whole lecture about fighting laziness, and Islam is against being unproductive in society, in your household. You have to, like 9/10 of deen is an halal income, right? Creating an halal income. But what would you say to fight this trend we are going through as a Muslim community?
The hadith says, "Man ya'mal yazdad quwwatan." He who works will develop more energy. And subhanAllah, I see this in my work. The more I interact with people, the more I speak, the more I wish to do more. You would assume that I lose energy, but it's completely the opposite. When I see that I'm making a difference in people's lives from a lecture, I'm motivated to give a second lecture and a third lecture and to keep on going on. If we Muslims can move a bit, be a bit more active, that activity will bring us more energy and it will become more energetic.
Ahsantum Sayyidina. And I can echo your words, because you practice what you preach, because we came from a majlis. It's now 11 p.m. It's almost a bedtime for most of us, but the Sayyid is here sitting right beside me and doing a podcast, alhamdulillah.
It's my pleasure.
Feeling very productive. Laziness and living in the Western societies had its effects, its positive effects, like, for example, freedom of speech, freedom of practicing your religion, but at the same time, all the negative influence we have. For example, we try to follow their standard, the standard of life of the Western society. We lost grip or touch of our own Islamic culture, our own principles. For example, one thing that's bothering me a lot when I see our community and communities in the Western Hemisphere is the Westernized hijab and the way of practicing Islam. Not with full khushu and full reflection and concentration. Like I said, we've become lazy. And a Westernized hijab, I want the bare minimum, I want to cover my hair and that's it. That's hijab for me. For the male as well, we go to beaches, we go to swimming pools where there are other people from other sexes. But we are okay with that. What would you say about that, Sayyidina?
Life in the West has its challenges, definitely, and some struggle to um, create compatibility between being a good mu'min, a good Muslim, a law-abiding Muslim, and at the same time enjoying yourself living in the West. Some fall into the problem of not knowing how to make it compatible. And so they, for example, you mentioned having a westernized hijab. In the beginning, let's try to sympathize. Wearing hijab is not easy for our sisters and our daughters. In societies where hijab is not very accepted, a society that promotes freedom for women to break from the shackles of their faith and religion and the influence of men, a culture that emphasizes on beauty and outer appearance. As I mentioned tonight in our lecture, that the West thrives, its economy thrives upon manipulating women with makeup, with lipstick, with mascara, with doing their hair, dyeing their hair, with clothing, with dresses, with shoes, with purses, with all of that. It gets their economy running. For our sisters to live in this sort of culture and then at the same time to be good mu'minat and to wear hijab is not easy. To be fully modest and implement hijab is not easy. So some opt to having a westernized hijab, and they think that they're getting the best of both worlds. They're not taking off hijab, but at the same time it's a westernized. I think we should not shun them away.
No.
And push them away. Instead, try to convince them that the whole purpose behind hijab is not to make it look fashionable. If you remember, Sajjad, several years ago here in the Netherlands, I gave a lecture called Fashion Hijab,
yes.
where it's hijab. You see, she's wearing a hijab, but it's fashionable.
Yeah.
In fact, it makes her look even more attractive.
Yeah.
And that defeats the purpose of hijab. The purpose of hijab is to draw away attention from your outer appearance, so that a man looks at you as a human being and not an object. Here in the West, they look at women as an object, as an object to be sold, as an object of desire. They have absolutely no respect. It's this is all slogans of women's freedom. When they say women's freedom, they actually mean a man's freedom.
Yeah.
Because when a woman has her freedom, who gets to enjoy that?
Right.
A man gets to enjoy that. But they sell the product that we promote women's freedom and the woman's choice to choose. Even the issue of abortion.
Yes.
Remember a couple of years ago, my body, my choice.
Yes.
You know who benefits the most from this? Men, not the woman.
Indeed.
Because a man can get away with whatever he does. He can impregnate a woman and encourage her to have an abortion.
Yes.
He's the one benefiting and not her. While he's encouraging her to destroy a human life, he gets to benefit. He gets to run away from his obligations and duties. This is Western culture, unfortunately. And a lot of our youth they admire Western culture, that they don't realize how manipulative that it could become. It manipulates our youth to thinking that this is modernity, this is human rights, this is human freedom.
Ahsantum. And what I said about westernized hijab, it's not only the women. I gave the example of a cover of the head, but I meant men as well.
Yes.
With tight jeans, tight clothes, and going to the beaches and swimming pools with their body showed to the women. And of course, the use of social media, same counts for them as well.
Sure.
In how they approached. And inshallah, we day by day develop. And
I would tell some brothers and sisters like this, that don't do something you would not want your children to do. Imagine if you're 40, 45, 50 years old and you have children that are doing what you're doing now. Would you be proud of them? Would you allow them to do such a thing? We have to ask ourselves that question. Don't do something that you wouldn't allow your children to do.
Ahsantum. And another great aspect where Western culture and this day and age and social media have a huge negative influence on is our marriages and relationships. It became very toxic, and we lost our own values and principles and the important ingredients, what makes a successful marriage. We try to live like the Western society. We lost our own Islamic values. We value our cultures, our native cultures, more than what Islam said about marriage. We don't take Rasulullah and Sayyida Khadija salamullah alayha, Imam Ali and Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha as an example. We take the Turkish soap series as an example, or the American soap series,
Right.
unfortunately.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Here in the West, they teach us the pursuit of personal happiness. You have to be happy. You, the husband, have to be happy. You, the wife, have to be happy. At all costs. At all costs. This is a problem. In Islam, we also pursue happiness. But what is happiness? Happiness is when you make others happy. Anyone around you. You're making your husband happy, you'll be happy. Making your wife happy, you'll be happy. Making those in your life happy, that is true happiness. That is self-fulfilling. But in the West, this sort of notion is missing. It's all about you, your happiness, your pursuit of happiness. Let your mother and father burn. Let them live in pain and agony. Choose your gender. In the morning you're a man, in the evening you're a woman, the next day you're both, the day after that you're neither. As long as it makes you happy. Well, what about the people in your lives? What about your spouse? What about your mother, father, your siblings, your children? What do they have to say? How do they feel? It doesn't matter. This pursuit of happiness, it causes selfishness. And most failure of marriages comes down to selfishness. Either the husband is being selfish or the wife is being selfish. And they can't resolve the problem. They cannot compromise. They can't reach a compromise. Islam teaches us to compromise. Compromising doesn't necessarily mean you're accepting to be unhappy. In the long run, you will be happy. But you just have to learn to compromise for a greater good. Our values have been changed, unfortunately. We have to come back to the core values of Islam.
Ahsantum, ahsantum. And I'm asking you this just because I got a lot of questions during the Q&A about this topic. It was regarding marriage as well, but it was a specific type of marriage, a sushi marriage as we call it, Sunni-Shia marriage. What is your take on that, Sayyidina?
From a fiqh perspective, our ulama allow a Shi'i man to marry a Sunni woman, or
vice versa,
a Sunni man to marry a Shi'i woman. Yes, Sayyid Sistani says that as long as you are not afraid of being affected ideologically, especially for a woman, a Shi'i woman to marry a Sunni man, she may marry him as long as she is not afraid of being affected. Perhaps he will change her school of thought and change her ways of faith and religion. Otherwise, if you are certain of your faith and of your school of thought, you may marry a Sunni man marries a Shi'i woman, or a Shi'i man marries a Sunni woman. But not from a sectarian perspective, but more from a practical perspective. Is this wise? If you have the option as a Sunni man, and you have the option of marrying a Shia woman or Sunni woman, would it be wise to marry a Shia woman, or vice versa? You're a Shia man and you want to marry a Sunni woman, but you have the option of marrying a Shia woman. You're bound to face conflict, especially when you have your children. What will the children become? Do they follow the Sunni father or the Shia mother? Do they follow the Shia father or the Sunni mother? What do you do in the month of Muharram? What do you do in the month of Ramadan? Which masjid do you go to? If you can resolve your issues, can your parents resolve their issues? It's not a matter of halal or haram. It could be halal, but not everything that is halal is wise to do. It should be the last resort. I personally suggest that Shi'is marry from their own and Sunnis marry from their own only for the reason of compatibility, so that there's no future problems. I've seen several families, a Sunni on one side, a Shia on another side, and they're bound to find difficulties and bumps on the way, on their way to happiness.
Ahsantum, ahsantum. Let's stick to the topic of Shia-Sunni, especially during the Gaza war, which is still happening, and now what's happening in Syria and Lebanon. You heard a lot of talk about unity, but it was mostly from one side, not from both sides. Why is the Sunni-Shia unity idea or concept a one-way street? Why does it always come from the school of Ahl al-Bayt, from the followers of the school of Ahl al-Bayt to pursue unity?
First of all, the Quran calls for unity above everyone else. وَإِنَّ هَذِهِ أُمَّتُكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَأَنَا رَبُّكُمْ فَاعْبُدُونَ. This is one ummah. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ إِخْوَةً فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَ أَخَوَيْكُمْ. Mu'mineen are brothers. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا وَلَا تَفَرَّقُوا. Hold on to the rope of Allah and do not be divided. So the Quran time and time again tells us to وَلَا تَنَازَعُوا فَتَفْشَلُوا وَتَذْهَبَ رِيحُكُمْ. Do not argue, do not have conflicts, remain together, be brothers, be one family. So the Quran emphasizes on this. Now, if we, followers of Ahl Bayt, if we Shia, we hold on to unity, and our Sunni brothers and sisters don't care about unity so much, does that mean that we should put unity aside? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We continue to strive for unity. Even if our friends and brothers and sisters don't care for unity as much, we'll tell them we still care for unity. Let's remain together. Why, Sayyid Sajjad? Because we have common challenges. We have common enemies. We have enemies that don't care. You know, Islamophobes don't care if you're a Sunni or Shia. They care because you're a Muslim. They hate you because you're a Muslim. So would it be wiser that we work independently, Shias do their own thing and Sunnis do their own thing, or we work together, come hand in hand? We have common challenges. We have common enemies. We have common issues. We can come together and work. And I know that there are some sincere Sunni brothers and sisters that also strive for unity, but there are some that underscore the issue of unity. And as do we as well. We have some from the Shia community that also could care less about unity. And in fact, they try their best to cause division between Sunnis and Shias. So there are extremists from both sides. Unity should not be a one-way street. It should work both ways. But if one is negligent, does that mean that the other person should be negligent as well? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Let me give you an example. If there's two drivers, and one of them kept on falling asleep, did not get enough sleep the night before, the other driver should also say, you know what, I should stay up the night before driving, and I shouldn't care as well. If one person is negligent and careless, the other person should not. If one group is negligent, the other group should not be.
What is your take, and what is the take of the grand scholars, Sunni-Shia debates? Nowadays, especially our youth, laymen, just like me, have not studied, have not the correct background, the speciality, the wisdom to engage in debates, but they do. Because they feel a sense of pride, maybe with the right intentions, but they shouldn't. They do more harm than good.
Ahsant. First of all, if you're not well equipped to argue in a debate, then don't. Because you will do more harm than good. That person's ignorance will reflect on their school of thought. We'll say, look at the Shia. They don't even know what they're talking about. They haven't read their books. They're clueless. So it does more damage than good. But if you are well versed in debates and you're a scholar and you can debate, you have to ask yourself this question: is there any good expected from this debate? Is there any positive outcome expected? Can we come to common understanding? Can I influence the other person? Can I bring them towards the school of thought of Ahl Bayt? If so, then yes, such debates are welcome and they're positive, and we should strive for them. But if such debates only create animosity, they create enmity, they only distance us from one another, then it has absolutely no meaning. The Quran says, وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ. Don't argue with the people of the book. Of course, we're talking about Muslims, not kuffar. But the concept of debate, وَلَا تُجَادِلُوا, don't debate, إِلَّا بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, unless you expect good results. Unless it's a good debate, it's not harsh, you begin with what you have in common, then you may debate. Look at the Quran, even with the people of the book. قُلْ يَا أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَىٰ كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Come, people of the book, let's see what we have in common. The Quran says, discuss what you have in common, not your differences. أَلَّا نَعْبُدَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ وَلَا يَتَّخِذَ بَعْضُنَا بَعْضًا أَرْبَابًا مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ. Let us come and worship one God. Let us not take each other as gods. You see, the Quran says, when you discuss with others, discuss what you have in common. Don't discuss your differences, unless some good is expected out of it.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina. We're now in the holy month of Sha'ban, and I don't want to make it too long for you, as this has been a long night for you as well. We are now in the holy month of Sha'ban, going towards the holy birth of Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu al-Sharif. And we are on the verge of getting in the buffet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the grand month, the holy month of Ramadan, inshallah wa ta'ala, if there is life. And Sayyidina, what would you say, when do you have a successful month of Ramadan?
The measure of success in Ramadan is how much you've changed. Not physically, not how many pounds or kilograms you've lost, but how many sins you were able to overcome. How many sins you've lost, how many bad habits you were able to overcome. That should be a measure of success for the holy month of Ramadan. That is how I discover, was the month of Ramadan effective or ineffective? Am I closer to Allah Azza wa Jal? Do I have a stronger will over my desires, over my shaitan, over my sins? Or as soon as Ramadan finishes, I go back to my old ways and absolutely nothing changed. That should be a measure of success. It's a good Ramadan if it was able to transform me, to make me a better person. But if I'm the same exact person, then that means Ramadan did not benefit me. The problem is not with the month. The problem is with myself. I did not allow Ramadan to transform me into a better human being.
Ahsantum. What are some tips you would give the young generation, the next generation, especially in the West, for the coming month of Ramadan? Points to reflect upon, points to work on.
First of all, Ramadan passes by very quickly. Before you know it, it's already the 5th night, 10th night, 15th.
We are so busy making checklists, but we won't.
Ahsant. Yeah. Ramadan passes by very quickly, and Allah says, ayyaman ma'dudat, that it is only a couple of days. Ramadan passes by very, very quickly. 2, Ramadan is now almost in the winter. Spring, winter, so the days are short, the nights are long, it's still cold, you don't feel thirsty, you don't get too hungry because the days are not too long. So we could really utilize the holy month of Ramadan. Ramadan will be a blessed month, a beautiful month, if we can contemplate, use it to think, to ponder over what I've achieved, what I've contributed. Ramadan should be a productive month, not just spiritually, but even materialistically. A productive month where I could achieve, where I could produce, where my body is not thinking of food and drink. I clean out my system. I rely on the energy from Allah Azza wa Jal and not energy based on food. I seek motivation and inspiration from Allah Azza wa Jal. We fast during the day. At night we pray. There's so many beautiful supplications that we may utilize the month of Ramadan in reciting. And ultimately we hope that it becomes a very productive month for all of us.
Inshallah. Inshallah. And to end this beautiful podcast where I've benefited a lot from, thank you very much, Sayyidina. What role should Imam al-Mahdi play in our lives this holy month of Ramadan?
Imam al-Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah is alive. He's the Imam of our time. We have to let that sink in. Every group had the Imam of their time. During the time of Imam Ali, he was the Imam of their time. During the time of Imam Sadiq, he was the Imam of their time. We have an Imam of our time, and he's alive. He's not dead. And he watches us, he sees our actions, and he's waiting to reappear. It is very important to connect with him, to remember that he's alive, to pray for his reappearance, to genuinely pray that we want him to come back, we want to see him, we want to see his kingdom, we want to see the days that he rules in the name of Islam and instills all Islamic principles and values into this world. And Ramadan is very much affiliated with Imam al-Mahdi, because on Laylatul Qadr, when the Quran descends and the angels descend, they go to none other than Imam al-Mahdi. So he plays a crucial role on Laylatul Qadr and in the month of Ramadan. We must always pray for him, keep him in our minds and in our hearts. And even when we do some a'mal, to do it on his behalf as well. That will bring us closer to the Imam of our time, inshallah.
Ahsantum, inshallah wa ta'ala. Sayyidina, thank you very much for this amazing and enlightening podcast. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you abundantly. Thank you for your time. I know this was a long night. May Allah bless you and give you more success.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be on your show.
It's an honor for us.
And thank you for hosting me here in the Netherlands. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor to be with you and the rest of the community here.
The honor is ours, and let's not make it 7 years again, inshallah.
Inshallah, absolutely.
Inshallah. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe, and please leave your comments and feedback. We've just started and we want to create more for you so you can benefit, inshallah wa ta'ala, and you can get closer to the Imam of your time and be a productive member and inshallah a productive devotee of the Imam of your time and for Islam. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.